Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Thank you for staying with us. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines around the globe this week. The Nigerian government has issued a flood warning as heavy rains began to gain its intensity in July and has issued a red alert for 18 out of the 36 states of the Federation and Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Professor Joseph Ustev, along Minister of State, Bello Goronyo, highlighted the states vulnerable to flooding during a media briefing in Abuja on Thursday. They noted ongoing discussions with Cameroon's Lagdo Dam regarding water releases and assured the public of continuous monitoring. The ministry urges residents living near water bodies and riverbanks to evacuate promptly to prevent potential disasters.
Both Kanji and Jeba dams of River Niger are still impounding water into their reservoirs. Shiroro Dam of River Kaduna is equally impounding water. There is no release of water yet from any of the dams within and outside Nigeria. At this point, it is important to state that river flooding is expected beginning from this month, July 2024. The states that are likely to be impacted within this, as predicted, are Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Adamawa, Benue, Bayelsa, Cross River, Delta, Jigawa, Edo, Kogi, Kebbi, Kaduna, Niger, Nasarawa, Ondo, Ogun, Rivers, Taraba, and the FCT. The Lagdo Dam operators have informed us that they are currently filling the dam for hydropower generation. However, we will keep monitoring the development on this flank and keep close tab on other monitoring stations as we are approaching the critical months. It is in light of the above that the Federal Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation wishes to urge the states and the general public to take necessary measures to prevent ugly flooding menace of the past years.
While residents of Lagos were this week left counting their losses after Wednesday's 10-hour-long heavy rain, which caused severe flooding, a traffic gridlock, and extensive damage to businesses across the metropolis and its outlying areas. Reports backed by videos have surfaced showing residential areas almost completely submerged by the flooding. Thousands of commuters were either stranded or their movements impaired by traffic gridlock arising from the downpour. A two-story building in the Mushin area of the state is said to have caved in due to the floods. Also affected were hundreds of children who could not make it to school in some areas of the city. Several videos showed commuters submerged by the floods, while some miscreants constructed makeshift bridges to extort commuters and charge 100 naira to carry people through floodwater.
I swear, the water is entering my pants. People are even backing themselves. Who will back me like this? How much for backing? Hey, what is this like this? God. Hey. Jesus. God, what is this? What is this? Oh yeah, move, go fast. Keep your phone on.
200 crossing, 200 crossing, 200 crossing. On job people.
100 naira long back. Live moto. They are collecting 100 naira on each person to take this passage. This is straight fare under bridge. Pay 100 naira before you can take the passage. And we have presidents in this country. We have president Tinubu. Look at their faces.
My record, wow. You know, this entire week has really been interesting.
How was your Wednesday, by the way?
Thankfully, you know, I was actually supposed to be in the office on Wednesday, but then last minute, I think another person stepped in to cover the shift, and thankfully so, because if I decided to make my way down to the island on that Wednesday morning, I would have been caught in a flash flood, because I do know someone who was 1 minute making his way to the island, and the next minute he was stuck in traffic, and before he knew it, he had to climb to the top of his car so that he doesn't get, you know, carried away. And then there's some area boys in the area that had to come and carry him on his back, of course, and he had to give them some kind of financial compensation. But there's so many things to take out of this. I think first off, thankfully, a lot of people didn't lose their lives, but even if, no matter how small, even if it was one person who lost their life, of course, it's not a great thing, especially for the family members. I was watching the interview that, you know, Tokunbo Wahab, you know, he was here on Arise News, and even on a couple of other Lagos State Commissioner for Environment, was on here talking about all the things that had been put into place to make sure that something like this didn't happen. He was very apologetic, of course, apologizing to Lagosians but also spoke about the fact that it's flash floods, and for that reason, you know, you can't really combat nature, and you just have to kind of do what you can. But what really strikes me as interesting in all of this is, first off, how in the face of adversity, how Nigerians can quickly turn tragedy into either comedy or something that they can use to make money. Just on the screen there, you could see people who were carrying other members of the public, not minding themselves, I guess, wading through the flood, carrying them on their backs and charging 100 naira. That really speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit of Nigerians. However, on that same note, there were people, especially at that trade fair, and Mr. Tokunbo Wahab did confirm that those people, as of yesterday, about 4 or 5 of them had been arrested for under the trade fair underbridge for actually, you know, charging people using that makeshift bridge to get over it. Now, the third point I would like to make really speaks to the fact that we already had a cholera outbreak. And if we're seeing a situation where there's still constant flooding, the minister has come out to say that the cholera might spread further in Nigeria due to this flooding. He spoke about the fact that outside of Lagos, Ondo, Kaduna, Anambra, Benue, Adamawa, and 12 other states were those that were high risk to this flooding and, of course, the cholera spread. So at this point, it's really up to the Commissioner for the Environment and Waste Resources to think about the best way to plan ahead, because we know that the rainy season comes at this time every year. It's not just about, you know, on the day now, everybody now just trying to figure out how they're going to sort it out. And not just to hold the Lagos state government accountable, to also hold Lagosians accountable, because there was a picture circulating of a man and a woman who during the flood had thought it's best to go outside and pour their refuse into this same flood. Then we come online and start complaining.
They were arrested.
They were arrested. Exactly. Thank goodness. And then you come out and say, oh, there's flooding. Everywhere is blocked. You know, it needs to be a synergy. The Lagosians and the Lagos state government. But we also need to remember that we are at the bottom, at the lower part of the basin. So we'll always continue to have, and Lagos is a coastal city. Yeah. So we'll continue to have, you know, these kind of flood, what's it called?
Flood situations.
Flood situations, flash flood situations. We can't run away from it. But really and truly, and there was one more suggestion that I did see online, where there should be a collaboration between this commission and the media, so that we can, in real time, people can continue to understand what is going on, and the places that have been blocked because of this flood can be communicated to members of the public, so that they know how to navigate. We used to have that traffic, traffic radio, all of those things that can also be implemented in a situation like this.
Yeah, the traffic radio is still there for Lagos State, and one of the beauties of the state, you know, responding to things, you know, on time, and on any day like that, you could see that the traffic radio has always lived up to the billing. I like all that you have said, and it is incumbent on not just the government, but individuals, you know, and citizens themselves, you know, to take responsibility. But I think that a lot of people got carried away by Lagos this, Lagos that Wednesday. Everybody had a story to tell. But that story was not limited to Lagos. There were at least 8 to 12 states of the Federation that were affected by the rains and, of course, the flood, the gridlock, so much so that at a time, a photograph of a flooding that happened elsewhere, and not even this year, was being shown, circulated on social media, that it happened somewhere in Ibejileki in Lagos State, which was not true. So the overt concentration on Lagos, maybe because it's the commercial nerve center, and practically a good chunk of the people who use social media in Nigeria are concentrated in Lagos. So the overt concentration it was a bit unfair, in my opinion, to Lagos State. It wasn't just about Lagos State. But of course, there is always, something to be done, which I believe is what Gbadebo Rose Vival will be coming here to discuss beyond what the Commissioner for the Environment, Tokunbo Wahaba, said on the part of government. Gbadebo, I think, has a few other ideas as to how the city, and I believe by extension the entire state, can function better. I like the fact that NIMET is giving real-time information. The minister, himself for water resources and the environment, was also on television, giving useful advice to the people. I think that's important so that people can take it seriously, that about 12 states will be encountering this kind of a situation. And then I believe additional 14 or 15 states are also on high alert. So that is important, so that you don't think it's only in Lagos. A good chunk of the 17 states in the southern part of Nigeria are being warned to say that you are not immune from what is happening. But very quickly, on the issue of the entrepreneurial part of Lagosians that you mentioned, I think what will be illegal will be when you now take ownership of a territory and then charging people, illegally. Anywhere in the world where you find this kind of a thing, and we could see what happened in Jamaica, we could see what happened, especially in Dubai. What happens is that government is proactive. And you know that people may not be able to cross because pedestrian bridges or streets are flooded. Local governments and councils will provide an alternative, something that you can ride on, so that people who are like the miscreant that we are seeing on screen will not be able to take advantage of what is happening. But then if we don't have that, and you have a gentleman, whether miscreant or anybody, who says, I can carry you on my back, just to move to the other side for 100 naira or for 1,000 naira, you do it because you want to get to work on time and you don't want to
get submerged in that flood water.
In the water. So in order not to have that done, it is the duty of the local government, for example, and I believe the Ministry of Special Duties to government. Those are the kind of little interventions that you can provide to ensure that, because at the end of the day, just like Tokunbo Wahab said, in 2-3 hours, once the rain stops, the actual flooding will recede. But then it is the gridlock, it is the build-up that is the issue. That is where government comes in. Not to say that flooding will never happen. I mean, it's a coastal city. A good chunk of the state is below the sea level, and you will have things like that. And I like what the minister said. This has got nothing to do with the lockdown dam that usually deposits water here. If that happens, we know that we will encounter far worse, especially in the rainy season. So it is for everybody to be up, to their duty, and not just to blame government. Government has a lot to do, but so do individuals and citizens.
Definitely. All right, then let's move on to our next story. The federal government has maintained that the recently signed Samoa agreement is strictly for the economic development of the country, contrary to widespread claims that it contains provisions for same-sex marriage. Speaking in defense of the agreement, Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, said that there is nowhere in the document where same-sex marriage is mentioned. According to the minister's spokesperson, Bolaji Adebiyi, what Bagudu signed was about a $150 billion trade component. Earlier on Thursday, the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, clarified that the federal government ensured that the agreement did not contravene the 1999 Constitution as amended and other extant laws. He said there is an existing law in Nigeria that criminalizes same-sex relationships. Yeah, definitely. This was something that was trending this week because of, the controversial LGBTQ aspect of it. And honestly, just try to figure out exactly what this confusion was about. Really and truly, when these kind of international laws are brought in, it's still dependent on the sovereignty of the nation. You can't say that because an international deal is being signed, then laws that have already been enacted within the Nigerian constitution are now, null and void. Now, in the Nigerian Constitution, Section 12 is what pushes that, saying that it has to be reenacted into Nigerian law. Now, we also know that the Matrimonial Causes Act, Section 1, recognizes a marriage as a union, or a relationship, or a marriage rather, as a union between a man and a woman, and that is stated between our laws. Within our laws. Same-sex Prohibition Act as well, that was signed in 2014 in President Goodluck Jonathan's administration as well, also speaks to this same-sex marriage as well. And again, like I said, it is within our law. So this Samoa agreement, this thunderstorm that it has riled up during the week, honestly, I believe is just people that are trying to take advantage of those that are not able to interpret it interpret it correctly. There was a statement put out by Bashir Ahmad that said, signing a mere deal cannot legalize LGBTQ relationships in Nigeria unless the National Assembly passes a new bill to change this law and the president signs it into law. So the fact that we've signed this deal, I don't think it's enough for people to get riled up. Nigeria is still a country that stands against, same-sex marriages as well as, the LGBTQ movement. So, yeah.
All right, Shaitan, I agree with you, and I commend the government for coming out from basically two angles, from the angle of the Ministry of Budget and Economic Planning, and the spokesperson of the minister, Mr. Bolaji Adebi, very grounded, well-rounded journalist, has given clarification. And of course, from the office of the Honorable Minister for Information himself, who has also clarified, and the emphasis is on the $150 billion potential, deal that Nigeria could take advantage of, in terms of support, loans, and things like that. So, that's very much in order for government to say, oh no, we're not endorsing any Samoa deal that will sneak in anything. But you also have to understand why people may not be convinced, or why there was fear and apprehension. It is not only government who has studied this agreement. There are other civil society organizations who are also very conversant with what is going on, and they understand that usually when the international community, particularly those who are sympathetic to the cause of the LGBTQ and all, and there's a language that they use for those sort of community, people with limited rights, or they think that their rights have been trampled on. There are ways that they know that their interests can be, sneaked into countries, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where they think that they can influence things. And you have to understand that this LGBTQ consideration was part of the reasons why a lot of people think that President Goodluck Jonathan didn't have the support of the international community, particularly the American government, in 2014 and 2015. The elections came, after the same-sex prohibition law was passed, in Nigeria. So people have the right to be concerned. People have the right to say that, yes, a reenactment will have to occur before you can say that, oh, we are now, in some ways, the government might be sympathetic, to the LGBTQ community and things like that. But they are saying that maybe we should have demanded a rephrasing of the Section 9 E of that document that seems to suggest that there will be consideration for people whose rights might be trampled upon.
As long as we collect that money, if we collect that money, we will collect what is coming with it.
You know, so it is understandable that government might think that what does this mean? In any case, you are not going to reroll it into our consciousness. You are not going to force up. It will still have to go through the National Assembly. But of course, you know, it is about the fine line of the documents that you sign, and that is what the civil society and especially Nigerians who are vehemently opposed, you know, to this whole LGBTQ. You know, they know how America has been dealing with certain countries, Ghana, you know, Uganda, you know, etc., Tanzania. Those who are saying that no, this is not part of us. Nigeria seems, and I believe maybe this current government seems not to be carrying that fight. Seems not to be very emphatic about the fact that hey, don't play around that area because we are not going to deal with it. So I think that is the cause of, you know, why people are saying that it looks like this government is a bit liberal. Yes, they are not likely going to change the law, but the liberal aspect of what you're doing might be interpreted by those who are pushing this agenda to say that, oh, maybe there are cracks somewhere that we can go in through. So people are on their guards, people are on their alert, and they are saying that it will have been better for that contentious aspect of what we signed to have been rephrased, and we had the right to demand it. Yeah. But of course, if you're dealing with 150 billion potential money, dollars potential money coming into your economy, maybe there are things that you overlook in the hope that by the time we have to cross the bridge, we'll deal with it. All right, we move on. The British Labour Party on Thursday this week recorded a landslide victory in that country's general election, sweeping hundreds of seats across the country and ending 14 years of conservative rule. On Friday, King Charles III appointed Starmer the new prime minister. By this victory in the polls, Labour Party decisively brought to an end a period of 14 years of sometimes very fractious conservative rule. Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak wasted no time in conceding defeat, called Starmer to congratulate him and acknowledge that Labour had won convincingly. In his victory speech, the Labour leader promised national renewal and vowed that he would put country first, party second.
Therefore, I hereby declare that Keir Starmer has been duly elected as the Member of Parliament for Holborn and St Pancras constituency.
Meanwhile, the newly elected British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has vowed to rebuild the country. Speaking as dawn broke in London, he said Labour would offer the sunlight of hope, pale at first, but getting stronger through the day. For Starmer, it's a massive triumph that will bring huge challenges as he faces a wary electorate impatient for change against a gloomy backdrop of economic malaise, mounting distrust in institutions and fraying a social fabric. Starmer acknowledged in a speech to supporters that the mandate comes with a great responsibility, saying that the fight to regain people's trust after years of disillusionment is the battle that defines their age.
We did it! You campaigned for it, you fought for it, you voted for it, and now it has arrived. Change begins now. And it feels good, I have to be honest. 4.5 years of work changing the party. This is what it is for. A changed Labour Party, ready to serve our country, ready to restore Britain to the service of working people.
Well, there you have it. After 14 years of the Conservative rule, the Labour Party has stepped in, and you can just see how excited Starmer is. I think it was yesterday or the day before, we saw the ceremonial kissing of hands with King Charles III, and that was the official, let's say, the official acceptance of, the Labour leader Keir Starmer as the Prime Minister, and now it's time for him to, step in in and form his government. I did see, Sunak conceding, saying that the British people had delivered a very sobering verdict, and of course he considered that the Labour Party won the election. There were notable...
Convincingly.
Yes, notable wins in there. We saw Nigel Farage, the leader of the Hard Rights Reform UK party, win a seat after, 7 failed election attempts. Jeremy Corbyn, who led the Labour Party into the general elections of 2017. And exactly. And 2019. But he held on to his seat in North London, but this time as an independent. But what I really wanted to highlight were the six Nigerians. You see, the reports have been varied. I've seen 4, I've seen 6, but
minimum of 4 at least.
Minimum of 4 at least Nigerians, and very interestingly, all women.
British with
Nigerian
parent.
Yeah, okay. We Nigerians, we always say we must claim our. And I just wanted to just touch on the fact that these women, of course, elected into the UK Parliament, of course, we just, as Nigerians watching from across the pond, of course, very, very proud of them. But finally, what I want to touch on is the fact that we saw democracy at its best. For me, these are people that went to the polling booths, they voted. There was no glitch. There was no, INEC will get back to you. There was yes, because we have to keep, we keep looking for international best practices. So if there's anything that we're going to look to the UK and say that's what we want to copy or mimic, it should be that election process. I was watching a video where you could see people standing outside, I forget what building it was, and the announcements were right there on the building. On that same day, there was no back and forth, and I really hope that our democratic system and our electoral system can look to the UK and see the best way to integrate the good things about their voting system, so that by the time we go back for our elections, we're not having this issue of, let's contest it. We also didn't see any judiciary involvement in the announcements.
Everything was done in 24 hours.
Starmer came out, gave his speech. Rishi came out, gave his speech, and went home. No appeal court, Supreme Court. Come on.
It's not only the UK that we can learn from when it comes to doing something better. We saw what happened in South Africa.
Yes.
Just last month. We saw what happened, even in India. Ghana, a lot of people have said that, smaller countries in terms of, population. But India is by far 6 times, almost 6 times, bigger than Nigeria. Britain, that we got the parliamentary system from, we see that maybe there's nothing too bad, after all, about the parliamentary system of democracy. But, we thought that a presidential would pay us better, like the Americans, and that's what we're doing. But that would be a different topic, and Achike Chude, will be coming in to also discuss, what are the things that we can learn from all this. But I think there are 2 or 3 things, stand out for me in what has happened in London, in the UK, generally. It's about the fact that you can read the situation, and you can see the handwriting on the wall. That change was inevitable. Change because not just because it's been 14 years of the Conservatives, the 6, 7, last year has been particularly, not very encouraging, and we saw how issues cropped up, particularly during COVID, issues of corruption, issues of, nepotism, things like that. So it was easy to predict that people were tired of the Tories, and people wanted a change, which is why Kramer, is emphasizing the issue of change. Change has come, to Britain. The same change that we sang, in 2015, by the way. But we know where the change took many Nigerians. So for me, the good part, people felt that, those who would ordinarily have supported the Conservatives and who didn't necessarily vote Labour practically stayed away, from the election, which again is a commentary on the fact that once a government is not living up to its billing, as it was obvious under Rishi Sunak and his predecessors, you will get your results, on election day. The other part will be, which part of it that I've touched on, and it's not just about the fact that leaner, you spend less money running a parliamentary system of government. We have seen a demonstration of it with what happened in the UK. In 24 hours, the elections were held. There were no issues. Counting was done in real time. Yeah, it's a smaller country compared to Nigeria, but there's nothing. India is far bigger, as I said.
Yeah.
If you want to count, you can count. There ought not to be excuses about glitches in the technology that you are using and things like that. So maybe those are the kind of things that we can consider now that a few lawmakers in Nigeria are thinking of, will it be desirable to return to parliamentary system of government? And of course, it's about, Kramer himself. I think that he's a man of history. After John Labour, look at what happened to Jeremy Corbyn, who couldn't lead them, to the promised land. But here we have a 62-year-old, dashing, gentleman who is there and who's singing the change song. The only point that I would like to add about this lawyer, politician, gentleman, is that I hope that the club, the football club that he supports in London, will not rub off on, because you can no longer describe him as Shoroye. Shoroye in Yoruba, means is somebody who's perpetually waiting for the crown of a trophy. He has gotten his crown.
Yes.
He has gotten victory. He has gotten a trophy. But the club that he supports in that part of London is perpetually looking for glory. I hope that will not.
That will not be the situation. And just to add, just to quickly touch on that, I mean, there are talks, of course, now that he's in, the analysts are starting to look at what this new government, the economic challenges that they face. There's the question as to where Labour is going to get, that huge funding that is going to be used to, of course, build houses, factories, infrastructure, and most importantly, the NHS, which has been the bone of contention, in the UK. But of course,
will they continue using the same Rishi Sunak style of using our money, using people, the amount that you pay to get visa to the UK to fund some of the shortfalls in the UK, because that's what Rishi Sunak did. That's why we are paying. If you have to get a 10-year visa, to the UK now, you are paying almost 2 million naira. Together.
I never applied, though. I don't. So.
Okay.
Are you
using Red Quali?
No, I do it 6 months. Because that's what I can afford right now.
Big girl like you.
Just my safety. All right, then. That's all that on the week that was. A recap of key stories from the week. But before we get to our distinguished guests, let's spare a minute or two to catch up with stories making the rounds at the moment. We begin in Iran, where, in a significant political shift, voters have elected reformist candidate Masoud Pezeshkian as president following a tightly contested runoff election. Polls opened on Friday for a candidate to replace the late President Ibrahim Raisi, who was killed in a helicopter crash last month. Voters faced a choice between the hardline former nuclear negotiator Sahid Jalili and Masoud Pezeshkian, a heart surgeon and long-time parliament member who has allied himself with moderates and reformists within Iran's Shiite theocracy. Now, according to reports, vote count offered by authorities put him as the winner with 16.3 million votes to Jalili's 13.5 million.
All right, and in the United Kingdom, the UK's newly elected Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has announced key members of his ministerial team after a centre-left Labour Party's landslide general victory ended 14 years of Conservative rule. Starmer on Friday appointed Rachel Reeves as Finance Minister, the first woman to hold the post in UK history. The former child chess champion and the Bank of England economist has pledged to grow the nation's economy while showing strong financial discipline.
In sports, Spain and France last night secured their places at the ongoing European Championships in Germany. In the quarterfinals, the Spaniards defeated the host nation. The French ended up 5-3 winners.